Hello, it is Tuesday. It is Kim. I may or may not be wearing a pajama top at this time, but it's cozy. Got it at Target. It may or may not have some stains on it from what I was trying out cooking wise earlier, but you can't see it, so it's okay. It's the week between Christmas and New Year's. Everybody's supposed to be a little crazy, so we're casual daying. Um, so what was I working on today? I worked on a recipe. It's not a complicated recipe, but a little recipe video with egg white bites. First, I tried to make them really little, like teeny ones, sort of more like the Starbucks size, or maybe even a little smaller. It was a size pan I had. I didn't like them as much. So then I made them sort of standard cupcake size, and those came out much better. So I did those, and it's very simple. So anyway, I'll put that out. And then it's going to be part of my program as well, just an option in the cookbook that I put out with my program for Keto Unstuck, which will start mid-January. And then I was working on a budino. So budino is a Italian pudding. Basically, I realize it's probably the way I've always made keto pudding. So a budino traditionally is a pudding that's made thickened with egg yolks rather than being thickened with cornstarch or some type of starch like an American cooked pudding would be. Although there are some budino recipes that might have cornstarch in them, but I think traditionally, I'm not Italian, so an Italian might know better than me. But from what I understand, a traditional budino is just thickened with egg yolk, so it's really rich from that. It's the cream also. It's cream and egg yolks basically, cooked custard. It's sort of the consistency comes out not like a cooked custard, like firmer. It's slightly firm, but it's a pudding kind of texture. Anyway, I first had budino. I had a chocolate budino. Traditionally, I think they're often chocolate. When I was living in New York City, there was a Italian restaurant down the street from me, and I used to go there. This was way pre-keto, people. I used to go there and get lunch, and I would always order their budino, which was so delicious. And I was always like, I don't know what it is. It's delicious. Super rich, chocolatey pudding thing. And so often they'll be like, it's like the budino, and then there might be like a cookie crumble on it, and then some whipped cream. Super tasty. So anyway, I was trying out, I had some leftover pumpkin. I was like, pumpkin, we're about to get out of that season. I might not put it out even this year. I might save it for next year. But basically, I made a layered pumpkin butter and pumpkin vanilla with like spice cookie. I almost called them spruce cookies. No, spice cookie kind of layer thingy. Excuse me. So practicing that. Then I ate it. Because sometimes you do that when you make things like that. And now I am going to be full for like 4 days because it had a lot of whipped cream in it. And I don't really eat that much whipped cream anymore. Usually. It was delicious, but I'm like, wow, I'm full. Okay. So who has questions? Who wants to talk about something? I'm here for you if slightly scatterbrained. But what else is new? What's happening coming into this week? So hey, Mary, hey. I see some people are here. I was like, should I even do tonight? Are people going to be here? I don't think people know what day it is, what's happening. It's very confusing. I did manage to clean the kitchen before this live, so that was an exciting moment of timing. I'm always like 5 minutes behind on everything. I'm always like, wait, what? What time is it? Where am I going? What's happening? Anyway, I need a keeper. So I'm looking forward to the new year. What's going on in the new year? Well, we're going to continue to sell Common Sense Labs, my book with Dr. Ken Berry. Might work on another cookbook. I've got a couple of conferences in 2023 that I'm planning on going to, not planning on running. I am running my programs Keto Unstuck in 2023. Rita asks, are you doing anything as a challenge for 2023? I don't tend to run challenges. I think challenges can be good, but most of the time I feel like challenges are the wrong thing to do with anything to do with weight loss. I don't want to challenge you to lose weight or something. I want you to like permanently change your life. And I think there's a role like no booze January. I don't know. There's probably some catchier name to that. But some people are like, I'm not going to drink for the month of January. I'm going to make a commitment and do this. And I get that. Like if you need just like a hard stop or, something firm there, great. But like, I have in the past run challenges, but I've decided I could always change my mind, but I've decided it doesn't really fit with my ethics and my ethos. That's not to say that somebody couldn't run a challenge ethically, right? It's just the way I see challenges doesn't line up with the way that I want to live in this world of weight loss for people. Does that make sense? Anyway, so I am running programs like you can join my Keto Unstuck program for January, but like life is pretty challenging. I kind of like to be a soft place to land that helps you live the rest of your life in a better way. And so that means the word has stopped appealing to me. I may have gotten way too philosophical on that question. But that's kind of where I am. Thanks, Mary. She says, anyone is thinking about doing Keto Unstuck, do it. It was life-changing for me. And yes, and I did decide I'm going to offer 2 tracks this time. I've never done this before, but 2 tracks in Keto Unstuck. One will just be taking the course. So you'll get access to all the information, all the lessons, all the how-tos. And then the other track is like the VIP track. So you get access to me. I will work with you and help you with things one-on-one. And so that there's a sort of a price point of one of those that obviously the first one that's pretty low so that if someone's struggling a little more financially, they can still get the information. So that's what I decided to do. And that'll be opening up in the next few days, Keto Unstuck. Oh no, Pat's been sick. I'm sorry about that, Pat. I hope you're getting well. My parents got hit with that over the Thanksgiving break, and it kind of stretched out from the Thanksgiving to the pre-Christmas period. We luckily got all clear for Christmas, but Melinda says, have I talked about the 80-20 fat thing? Wondering what people thought about it. So what I would assume you're talking about there is an 80% fat, 20% protein diet. That's usually what people mean by 80. There's a lot of things. Some people say like 80-20, which means like in non-keto land, people will talk about 80-20 a lot. To say like if you do like really like careful, spot on to the, measure like solid choices 80% of the time, you can do like fun stuff 20% of the time. Or like what you do 80%, this is a Pareto principle, is that it? What you do 80% of the time, or God, there's another one. This is a one in business. You spend what you do with 20% of your time will make up 80% of your income. It's sort of like there's this like 80-20 split thing. But what I don't think you're referring to those. I think what you're referring to is the 80%, 20% fat and protein ratio, because that is more an 80-20 that's discussed in keto, especially because you use the word fat. And so I don't like percentages for the most part. Why don't I like percentages? Well, it can really vary because let's say I am eating 1,000 calories a day, right? And I'm eating 80% of that I'm going to get my little calculator here. I used to be able to do math in my head. I was the last year when I was a teenager that you had to do the SAT without a calculator. So anyway, it's been a long time though. So 80%, so let's say I'm eating 1,000 calories, which I'm not suggesting you do, but I'm just saying, let's say I'm eating 1,000 calories. I'm way under eating. And I was like, okay, I'm eating 80-20 per 80-20. All right. So 80% of that is I'm eating 800 calories of fat and 200 calories of protein. Yeah, right? 0.2 times 1,000. Yeah, so 200 calories of protein. I divide that by 4. That means I'm eating 50 grams of protein a day. That is insufficient for many people. But let's say I'm eating 2,000 calories. Then I'd be eating 100 grams of protein in like And, so it's like, no, don't do percentages, do grams. So the way that I think we should do our macros is the first thing you want to work out is your protein. So work out your protein by knowing the appropriate amount of protein for your body. And it can vary. It's a range, but in my opinion, it should probably never be lower than 1.4 grams per kilogram of reference body weight. You can just use target or goal body weight if you don't have a calculation on your reference body weight. So if you're like, all right, in a perfect world, I should weigh 150 pounds. Maybe you're like, I like being a little fluffier than that. I want to weigh 160. But it doesn't really matter that much. But let's say 150 pounds. I think my reference weight should be 150 pounds. So then I would change that into kilograms. So 150 divided by 2.2 is 68 kilograms. So I'm going to multiply that by 1.4, which is 1 gram per kilogram of reference body weight. And that comes up with 95. Round that up to 96 if you want. It's not really round. 95 grams of protein. And I wouldn't go under that. Do I think that's optimal? It's maybe just perfectly fine if you're super sedentary, not real active, whatever. But then I think some people do well up to like 1 gram per pound, which is, so that's 2.2. So that would be like, somewhere between 96 and 150 grams of protein for that person. And then you're going to find in there what works best for your body. Now, if you're super active, if you lift a lot of weights, you're going to want to be at the top of that. But then there's just an amount of protein that makes some people feel better and happier, right? Then you're going to figure out what is the total amount of calories that I need in a day. And there are ways to figure that out. We work through all of this very well in the Keto Unstuck. But if you know that your maintenance calories are 2,000 calories, because when you eat 2,000 calories, you don't gain or lose weight, which proves that those are your maintenance calories, right? So then you'd be like, okay, well, I'm eating 150 grams of protein, which is 150 times 4 is 600. I'm eating 600 calories worth of protein. 2,000 subtract 600. I have 1,400 calories left to play with. I can put those into fat. I can put those into a combination of fat and carbs because these are my energy calories, right? We have protein calories and we have energy calories because protein needs, like base protein needs, those are going to be that. So anyway, that's how you would calculate that. Mary says, just watch the YouTube with Nisha and we're making liver pate. Yeah, that was a while ago, but definitely make that. It's super good. Thanks, Pat. Steph says, in 1976, we didn't get to use calculators either. Yeah, that was before. I was born in 1976. So yeah, but I was the last year you were not allowed to take calculators. I think my senior year, it was optional. You could bring a calculator. But what got confusing is my job in college was to teach people to take the SAT. So by the time I was teaching it, they could use calculators. And it was very much like, you whippersnappers get to use calculators. What's that about? And now it says, and you said, now they don't have to take the SAT. I know. I mean, they found out a lot about the SAT and like what it means. And unfortunately, the thing I was best at in my life was the SAT. I'm really good at taking standardized tests. I don't know why. My brain just works very much or it did. I don't know if it does anymore. When I was a teenager, it worked just like, it was like right in alignment for the way they ask questions on the SAT. And I just understood how to answer the questions very well. I actually have an embarrassing story. Because I'm so good at standardized tests, when I was in elementary school, I figured this out, that I was good at these tests in the 6th grade when I was 12. And at the beginning of the year, they always gave us standardized tests to figure out which group, like, should we be in the advanced placement? Should we be in the, how should we track for the year? And so I took the test and then I went up to the teacher and I handed him the test and I said, this test will indicate that you should put me in the advanced group. Please don't put me in the advanced group. Put me in the medium group, because every year I get put in the advanced group and stuff is over my head. And I'm aware stuff is over my head. And it's because I test well. So if you could please put me in the medium group. I don't remember what it was called, but like there were 3 groups, right? Like, I was like, I will be a better fit. And he was like, well, I'll take that under advisement. Dr. Jones was his name. Mr. Jones. Was it Mr. Jones? I remember his last name was Jim Jones was his name. Anyway, so yeah, so I'm like I'm a lot of promises, a lot of academic follow through. Anyway. Yeah, anyway, that was a totally pointless story, hopefully, but anyway, just tell you got to get to know me. Random stories and all. Docs and Gal says, I just eat if I'm hungry, and that is a way to approach it. And I would say the only thing I'm ever concerned about when people are doing that, like I just eat when I'm hungry, is just making sure you're getting enough protein and that you're not under eating. For the most part, a lot of people do really great with that approach. But there are some people I think that can under eat over time for that. Yeah, all things keto with Kelsey. I have. I'm not necessarily planning on reading it. It's not really up my alley, and I have some disagreements. So anyway, thanks, Cameron, for my. I tell it like it is. I'm like, I'm not as smart as I appear. I just know a few big words and how to answer the questions on this test. Anyway, Michelle, how many weeks are Keto Unstuck programs? 8. This upcoming program is 8 weeks. And it's also, there are like pieces that are very much, you can rewatch stuff. You can, you don't have to, you don't have to ever feel behind. You get to review things. It's meant to give you an education forever, not just a short-term fix. So, but the one-on-one or the more intensive piece is 8 weeks, and it's easily accomplished in 8 weeks. How funny, Cameron! Yes, go banana slugs. So, my academic life ended when my last degree I got, I should say, I've taken courses since then, was at UC Santa Cruz. Yeah, I did indeed go to UC Santa Cruz. And at the time they were looking at the SAT as one of those things. In hindsight, I should have gone to UC Davis. The person I have become as an adult would have been better off at UC Davis. UC Santa Cruz, I mostly went because it was real pretty there. Like it's on the ocean. It's very pretty. Wetter than you would think there. It rained a lot. Anyway, but yes, banana, and that's why they have the banana slugs were indeed their mascot. We did not have a lot of sports teams, in case that was unclear by mascot being banana slugs. We did, in fact, have a lot of banana slugs. When you walked across campus, you had to watch out for banana slugs because they were in the forest there because it was wet. Let's go to Juju Bunny. Thoughts on nutritional yeast? I think it's a really good source of some B vitamins, I've heard, and that it can taste sort of like, it has a very umami flavor, which is sort of reminiscent of Parmesan cheese. So some people use it as a dairy-free kind of substitute. And so I'm not against it. I don't honestly use it much. I think I have some in the cabinet for some recipe experimentation, but and I believe it is a good source of a couple of vitamins and minerals. Like I think I remember specifically some B vitamins, but I'm not super expert on anything about it. Clearly, I'm like, I've heard something somewhere. I'm like your Dottie aunt. I heard this story about somebody. Anyway, Paula is currently wearing a Slugs t-shirt right now. Yes, and if you've ever seen the movie Pulp Fiction, banana slug sweatshirt is featured. I believe it says the fighting banana slugs. Yeah. Mary says, I use the nutritional yeast in my egg bread just for flavor. Yeah, it definitely has so, there are different flavors. One of them is umami. So umami is like the flavor that if MSG is the flavor of umami, but that flavor of like Parmesan cheese, mushrooms are very high in umami, tomatoes, high in umami, meat, right? It's sort of a meaty, it's not the salt, like because it can be confusing in some foods that that you're thinking, oh, it's the salt, but it works well with salt, but it's a meaty kind of flavor. And so umami is a very, it's very nice, that addition. I use extra, Mary, I use extra cream of tartar in my egg bread, which sort of tastes like sourdough. I didn't know this, but I found this out from Indigo Neely when I was like, wow, you use a lot of cream of tartar in your egg bread recipe. And she said, yeah, it's because it gives it that sour flavor. And I was like, oh my gosh, I thought that was from something else. She's like, no, I thought it was from the butter powder, but the butter powder, it doesn't taste like that at all. Cream of tartar has a sour taste. And so I like that sort of sourdoughy thing. Yeah. The one thing I would say about nutritional yeast, that I do know, that I would be careful about is, I think when anything powdered or dried or pure, any powder sits for too long, the nutritional content of it degrades. So one of the things that I worry about, it's sort of like iodized salt, right? They put a lot of iodine in salt. If you buy iodized salt, I know a lot of us don't buy iodized salt, but if you do, and then that sits in your cabinet, the iodine in it lowers over time. So a lot of these vitamins and minerals and foods degrade faster than the food goes bad. And so, one of the concerns I might have for, relying on nutritional yeast as a source of B vitamins might be that make sure you've got good, new, fresh nutritional yeast, and it's not sitting in your cabinet forever. That would be my concern about it. Sorry, eyelash in the eye. I hate that feeling. The other day I was like, what is in my vision? Like there was like a little bloop of mascara, which I'm not currently wearing, but a little bloop of mascara under my eye on Christmas, and I couldn't figure out what's going on. And then I found it. All right. Mary says, I love Neely's recipes. Yeah, they're really good, aren't they? She's a sweetheart. She's very nice, and she's really creative in the kitchen. And one of my commitments to this coming year, I make a lot of recipes and I never actually put them up on my website. So one of my commitments to this, I looked at my log of when I put recipes up and I was like, that's a long time between recipes. So I'm going to try to be better about putting recipes up. Oh, I have a question because I use you guys as my question asking audience. Okay, this might sound weird. This is just between us, right? I've sometimes thought, like, should I have a second website that's just about recipes, and maybe it's like low carb, strict keto, carnivore, so you could pick the kind of way of eating you're looking for, and that it's really focused on just recipes. Would that be, is that worth it? That's the question I have in 2023. Is the time and attention on that worth it? Do we need more recipe sites out there in the world? Or should I just stop thinking about new things to do and just keep doing what I'm doing? You can tell I have a little bit of ADD. Anyway, so would a really comprehensive recipe site, it does seem like a lot of work, Cheryl, which is probably why it's a terrible idea. But it's you get these ideas. You're like, oh, that'd be fun if somebody else did all the work. Cameron says, bad idea. All right, see, I thought it was a bad idea, but I got to have something to talk about. So I run ideas by you. What do you call that? Panel, some type of panel, opinion panel or something. Thank you, Melissa, since I do well with the psychological side. Yeah, it really mostly is about the psychology. There are so many people making good recipes out there, and I like making recipes because it's fun and I'm cooking anyway, so I might as well. Oh, Melissa, a sounding board. Yes, Patrice, that's what I was looking for. I think you gave me this idea, Melissa. It might have been you, or I thought you gave me this idea and you were talking about something different, but I saw this company, Factor 75, that does keto meal delivery. And I think it was you. I got a couple of meals delivered from them, and they were great. They were the best meal delivery I've ever gotten. I've tried a couple of other brands, and the feedback from my boyfriend was really helpful. Eric was like, I would just eat this. This is just good food, and it tastes kind of like a restaurant. And like takeaway, not like a fancy restaurant, but like, you pick up takeout kind of thing. And he said, and every other meal delivery we've gotten, I've been confused. Like, why is this a meal? Like, why did they put this sauce with this meat with this veg? Right? Like, this is not a meal that I would create or order. This is other companies, but he's like, all of the Factor 75 meals that I tried, I would order, or, at least I could see someone ordering them. And so they were really good. My one complaint was that they're a little low on protein for the way I eat. So each meal was like, they varied, some were higher, some were lower, but like maybe 600 calories and maybe 35 to 40 max grams of protein. And so for me, I would want those meals to be closer to 40 to 50 or maybe even 60 grams of protein for that calorie count, because my body just does better on a higher protein, more moderated fat approach. But if somebody did really well on high fat, then they're pretty good, but still it's like a little light on the protein. So what I saw though is that they offered, and I'll do a video about this, just about this. I saw that they had an add-on protein. Yeah, Melissa, I saw they had an add-on protein. So I ordered another week with add-on, like some chicken and some other things. So that what I actually decided I was going to do is cut the meal in half, because they always give you a lot of sauce in these meals, which is why they're pretty high fat, because there's a lot of sauce on things like Parmesan, creamy sauces and things. So I'm going to cut the meat and the like a piece of chicken, whatever they serve, and the sauce like in half, put half on some rice for my boyfriend's meal, and put the other half for me with some extra protein. And so maybe that'll make the macros work. So I'm gonna try that out and put it on video. And yeah, Melissa says the added protein is a little pricey. It is a little pricey. So I wanted to see what it was like, because it's certainly easy enough to go to Trader Joe's or wherever and get some pre-cooked chicken breast and throw that in there too, or add something like that just to make it work. But so I'll do a week at my house with meal prep planning there, and but truly they were of the meals that I've had, they were the best I've ordered from a meal company. And because my boyfriend liked them and was like, oh no, I would eat these too, I kind of was like, okay, well, how can I make that work in a way that benefits the way that I want to use it? I mean, and that's my general problem with meal prep kind of companies or meal plans or all that kind of stuff. Is like, I've figured out over the last 6 years what exact kind of macros work best for me. And they can't run a company customizing macros for everybody. So everybody's going to get the same macros, whether they're a small woman or a big, tall man, right? And so you have to figure out how to use these meals to make it work. And if you're just planning to eat these meals as your meals and not do any alterations, which is kind of why you do it, right? Because you're like, well, that's simple. I don't have to do any cooking. So, and, but then they're not going to be workable. Now, I guess you could like customize breakfast and lunch and then just have these dinners. So obviously there's more than one way to make it work, but that's what, but they were darn tasty was the thing we came up with. Anyway, Joanne, bad idea for multiple. Okay. See, like I get these wild ideas and sometimes they're not great. They're not super great. They're also one of the things about me that you should know is I seem to have ideas sometimes that I'm like, oh, that would be great if someone did all the work. Not me, because I can barely put on real clothes, as evidenced by the fact I'm wearing pajamas right now. Docs and Gal says, I literally don't like cooking. So you like my psychological perspectives. So, yeah. All right. So maybe I'll just commit this year to more recipes on the website. More recipes. And so I did put up my protein cake bread. Is it bread or is it a cake? I think it's a cake. The one with high protein and some cranberries in it. I did get that up on the website. So there you go. All right. What other questions do you have for me today before we close for this week? So this book still available for order, Common Sense Labs, at commonsenselabsbook.com. If anybody didn't get it, available. I think that if you ordered your book too close before Christmas, you might not have gotten it yet, because apparently the United States Postal Service has been overwhelmed with shipping this year, has not been able to keep up with the demand, but they're on their way. Steph, probably not. Running a meal delivery company is just crazy. But finding ones would be, I'd be fine with that. I like to recommend, but, Melinda, I do miracles for stalls. That's true. That is my focus. I focus all my programs on people who are stalled, because I feel like there's a lot of people giving really good advice on how to get started. But not a lot of people giving good advice on stalls, because all the advice, when I stalled, all the advice I got about stalls basically just made me angry, because I was like, yeah, thought of that. Thanks. So that's why I run my coaching around stalls. Although I do ongoing coaching with people about like maintenance or, just being successful in an ongoing basis. But, if there was one area of keto that I focus on, it's trying to get people from stall to success. Thank you for the reminder of what I focus on. A little bit distractible. Has anyone heard about the red ball, right? It's like the shiny red ball. It's just like you're out and there's like someone's playing with a shiny red ball and you're like, oh, there's the red ball. It's somebody who's like attracted to the new thing all the time. And we're all a little susceptible to that. Well, I appreciate the idea, Steph. But that would be a lot. That'd be a lot. Patrice, said, is there a minimum protein that we should eat at each meal? Yeah, I believe every time you eat a meal, or if you're eating, it's a meal, and you should be having at least 30 grams of protein in that meal. Why is that? Well, there's something called muscle protein synthesis, which is triggered by getting at least about 30 grams of protein. Now, if you were eating something that's really, really high quality protein, like as in really solid amino acid combination, not a lot of filler, not a lot of fluff in there, a little less might get you there. But if it's kind of like a whole foods type meal, 30 grams is a pretty safe amount, because you need to get a certain amount of certain amino acids, specifically leucine, to trigger muscle protein synthesis within your muscles. And so if you're just constantly under that, like you have a meal and it's 20 grams of protein, you have another meal and it's 10 grams of protein, you have another meal and it's 17 grams of protein, or 26, right? So you're getting these like little things of protein throughout the day, but they're not kicking the lights on. And so that means that you're, one, wasting potential opportunity for muscle growth, and two, most likely losing some more muscle mass than you want to be, because we constantly need to be regularly need to be triggering muscle protein synthesis 2 times a day, optimally. 3 is probably a little better, but 2 is all I ask for. 3 being a little better, but unless you're there, for 90% of the people, 2 is probably fine. If you're like killing it in the gym, I would say 3 is a better idea, because you don't want to kill it in the gym and then not, like, it's like building it. It's like hiring all these workers to build a house and then not ordering bricks. You're not going to build a house. You're just doing a lot of work, and you're spending a lot of money. People are just waiting around, and you can't build the house even though you have the workers. Can you buy the bricks? You didn't eat the protein. Anyways, that's kind of the way I think about it. So I would say that, and 30 grams is not enough total protein, but it's a minimum in a meal. So get it. If you did 3 meals with 30 grams of protein, that'd be 90 grams of protein. Not enough total protein for most people, for maybe a small person, but not for most people. But that is like a minimal amount per meal. And then you want to get to more than that. So, what was the question? Docs and gals, how much protein in 2 eggs? Around 14 grams of protein. So 2 eggs is not a meal. It is not an appropriate meal. Now, if you had 20. 2 eggs is also like 150 calories. Um, so remember what I said before about people who aren't tracking sometimes under eating. This is kind of what we might run into. So if I like put in 2 eggs, 2 large eggs, 12.6 grams of protein, 10 grams of fat, and just under 150 calories, 143 calories. So let's say you add a little bit of butter to that. You're going to bump up the calories, but not the protein. So let's say you cook that in like a half a tablespoon of butter. And so now that meal is 200, I'm rounding here a little bit, 200 calories, 13 grams of protein, 16 grams of fat. Okay, 1 tablespoon of butter. Let me fix that. And you pour the butter on the eggs. It doesn't stay in the pan because usually it doesn't always go there. But okay, so but if you pour that butter on the eggs, so 1 tablespoon of butter, 2 large eggs, 250 calories, 13 grams of protein, 21 grams of fat. So that is not a meal. Not a meal. A meal would be you could get away with 4 eggs. That would be 25 grams of protein, which is, like I said, a little under that 30, but protein are super high quality protein. Did I just say protein? Eggs are super high quality protein, very absorbable. So you could probably get away with 25 as a meal in terms of grams of protein there. So that is why I would say this is why it's important that we get some of this knowledge around our nutrition. So, or maybe it's 2 eggs and a couple of ounces of some type of meat, right? You could do some people get full on eggs. So I would do, if you do 2 eggs and let's add in some, like a sirloin steak. Oh, Canadian bacon. Canadian bacon is nice and high in protein. So let's say like Canadian bacon. I'm just going to pick Trader Joe's Canadian bacon, 3 slices of that with your 2 eggs. And now that meal is well, okay, you're going to have to do more than that. Let's go with 1 point. So 2 large eggs, a tablespoon of butter, and 4 slices of Canadian bacon. You're at 26 grams of protein. So you're getting there. So either more eggs or something with the eggs to bump up the protein. Melissa said duck eggs, more protein. Yeah, duck eggs are actually bigger. So I don't know that they might be a little more protein per egg, but they're like 2 duck eggs is 1 regular egg volume wise. So you could just have more regular eggs too. I just find duck eggs a little harder to come by. But yeah, you could always do duck eggs. Let me just look that up. Duck eggs. 1 duck egg. Yeah. So 1 duck egg is 124 calories. It's 9 grams of protein and 10 grams of fat. So a duck egg actually has both more protein and more fat, but it's just bigger. Think like a 1 duck egg is like 1 3/4 regular. So it's just bigger overall. So that is why they have so much more protein, which I think makes sense because duck eggs are much bigger. So yeah, Patrice said, is it true as we age, we need more protein? Yes, it is. So as we age, we develop something called anabolic resistance, which you can kind of think about it just that when you're young, you have hormones that help supplement your body's use or your body's muscle. Have you guys ever heard of like steroids? You know how bodybuilders use anabolic steroids? They inject themselves with steroids, right? Not all of them. There are people who don't do that, but like the super big buff people. Well, we have more of those hormones, those kinds they inject themselves with when we're young. And as we age, they all decline. Testosterone declines, growth hormone declines, all of these hormones decline, which means we had a get out of jail free card in terms of a lot of things when we were younger, that our body picked up the slack when we didn't do everything perfectly because we had a lot of really super duper hormones. And as we get older, our body has to do these things without the extra supercharge that we used to. which is one of the reasons, not the only reason, but it's one of the reasons that we need more protein as we get older. We don't have this extra added benefit of these supercharged hormones. And so I'm not suggesting that you take steroids. I'm just using that as an example to tell you what's going on there. And so, whereas when we were younger, we could eat less protein and our body would like use it and do everything we needed for it. It knew how to stretch that dollar. As we get older, our body becomes sort of resistant to some of that, and we need more to get the job done. So that means, whereas you might have been able to get away with doing like 1 gram per kilogram, or like, I don't know, just say like an average person when they're younger might have been able to get to do everything they needed to do eating 100 grams of protein over the course of the day. Now, older, you might need to eat 120 grams of protein to get the same bang that you used to get out of 100 grams, because you're not able to use it all. You're kind of, think of it as almost like you have some filters on. So you need to push more protein through the system to get the benefit of that protein. So that's why I set that limit at 1.4 grams per kilogram of reference body weight. I'm like, don't go below that. So that takes into account bumping it up slightly from sort of the general minimum recommendation, because I kind of assume everybody listening to me is older, because being older starts in your 40s. And if you're in your 30s, it's not a bad idea to get more protein anyway. And if you're in your 20s, say hi, because I know anybody in their 20s might listen to what I have to say. But yeah, protein is super important. Now, there's a point at which we don't need to keep loading it on for sure, unless you just love high protein foods. So, the amount that I'm talking about is not a crazy high amount of protein, but it is way higher than a lot of people are eating these days, and certainly a lot of women. Men are closer, but a lot of women, not the carnivores. The carnivores are doing pretty good for the most part. But the making sure you're getting enough protein is very important. And in the sort of the regular carb eating world, those women really don't get enough protein. Patrice says, I'm 72, 4'9", and overweight. Okay, so at 4'9", let's do a little math, Patrice. I'm just going to say 90 grams. Anywhere under 5 feet, I just say 90 grams of protein a day is probably going to get you where you need to go. And I would say at 72, I might think it might be easier for you to eat 3 meals of 30 grams of protein, and then you're getting in your 90. Or if you want to eat 2 meals, it's 2 meals with 45 grams of protein in them. That doesn't mean that you don't also eat fat in that meal. I'm just saying, make sure you're getting that much. So that might look like, let's look at if you're doing 2 meals a day, let's say, what could that look like? Let's see I'm just going to look up like flanks. One of my favorite, skirt steak. That's what I'm thinking of. So like if you're doing skirt steak, that would be getting in about 8 ounces of skirt steak in a meal. And she says, stage 2 kidney disease, still high protein. This is a different person asking this. First, I would say getting 90 grams of protein in a day is not high protein. Not high protein. I'm not suggesting high protein for everybody. I'm suggesting that we get enough protein. I would also say that I am not a doctor, and this is not medical advice. I'm not a licensed dietitian, so this is not medical advice. But from what I know and from what I've talked with Dr. Ken Berry about, the only people that really have to worry about protein intake is potentially very advanced kidney disease. So here's the deal. Protein does not harm your kidneys. Not at all. But think about it this way. Like, let's say you go to a museum and they've got an antique chair, and the antique chair is like roped off, and it says like, do not sit in this chair. You will be fined $1 million if you sit in this chair. Why is that? Is that because chairs aren't for sitting in? No, it's because that chair is already broken. Like, they have put that chair back together with little needle pins and little, it's like that chair is just being held together by prayer. It's broken already. So if you have very advanced kidney disease, your kidneys are kind of broken already. And so they can't do the job they're meant to do, which is deal with eating protein. And so there might be a phase of kidney disease where you need to be careful, but that's because things are so bad that your body can't handle basic processes. Lower level kidney issues. I know Dr. Berry has talked about that being helped by a higher protein diet, and your body is meant to deal with protein. Being low protein is not a good idea for people. So I cannot speak to kidney disease here. However, I can say that protein does not harm kidneys unless the kidneys are already very, very damaged. And then it's not that the protein harms the kidneys. It's like, if you got a filter that doesn't filter, then I'm not that they're a filter, but it just is an analogy, people. If your filter doesn't work, like the handle's broken and you pour things through the filter to try and filter it and your filter breaks, it's not because the thing you poured through the filter was a problem. It's because the filter was broken, right? So anyway, that's what I'm talking about. But the 1.4 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight is not a high protein diet. It is not. We have just gotten used to the idea that people should eat less protein diet. And yes, Nancy says with advanced kidney disease, your protein will be very closely monitored. So absolutely. And I would never say don't listen to your doctor there, obviously. Listen to your doctor. But there are several stages that they're calling kidney disease that are early along the way. And I do not believe, my personal belief, and from what I understand, that eating protein is what causes that kidney disease to advance. And it's not what caused that kidney disease to get started. They're either hereditary or caused by diabetes or things like that. So, Nancy says, what is the best app to find your macros? I actually don't think there are any, quite honestly. I just do what I do, which is calculate them. The recommendations of most apps I find iffy. So here, I'll just go through this again. Here's what I recommend. First, determine how much protein you should be eating. Second, figure out what your maintenance calories are. How do you figure out what your maintenance calories are? You figure out how many calories you're eating and not gaining or losing weight over the course of 1 to 2 weeks. Then beyond the normal water weight fluctuations that somebody would have. Then you calculate what your macros should be and you put them into your app, depending on if you want to gain or lose or maintain your weight, because now you know your maintenance calories, you know what calories keep you at the same weight. So you know if you want to drop them down, if you want to lose some weight. So that's the way that I would do it. The apps that I like in terms of tracking would be Chronometer is good. And probably if I would say, is there an app that I've looked at that I think might be good at telling you what your macros should be? Probably, what's this called? Carbon Diet Coach. So it's actually a diet coach app. It's not just keto, but they have keto options, but I actually don't like their keto macros. I like their low carb macros better than their keto macros. And then you just adjust a slider to set your carb limit. The reason I don't like their keto macros is I think it's too low protein for most people. So anyway, but they do a pretty good job because theirs is a responsive app, which means that if you gain or lose weight, it changes your calories to suit, so that if it doesn't guess correctly the first time about what your macros should be, it will get smarter over several months so that it is suggesting better macros. So like it's going to say like maybe your macros should be this many calories with this much going to protein, and then it's like, oh, but you're subtly gaining weight every week, we're going to drop that down. Or, oh, you're subtly losing weight, but you said you didn't want to lose weight, we're going to raise that up. So it will respond every week. It's like, were you compliant? Did you eat the macros we said you should eat? And how did it go? And then you respond. And so, if there's an app, another one like that is called MacroFactor. So MacroFactor and Carbon are two like interactive apps. And so those would probably be the ones that I would say, if you want to try an app that works that out, that would those two maybe. Um, Anthony said, I haven't found a go-to way of cooking an egg. It tastes bland. Probably need more salt. So for me, if I cook an egg without salt, it's going to taste bland. But cooking it in salted butter or cooking it with butter and salt, it's always tastes good to me. Nancy's okay. Uh, Keto with Kelsey. Today I tried 3 eggs with a quarter cup of cottage cheese blended in them and scrambled. Ate it with a side of bacon. That's very yummy. The egg bites I made today had cottage cheese blended into them. So good. Cottage cheese is a great hack for extra protein, especially if it's good culture, just because that's the best tasting one I've ever had. Pat, what is my recommendation for how long to be on a cup before going back to maintenance? Well, I would say for most people, I think 12 weeks is a good estimate. If you feel good, you're still losing weight, you're not having any signs of like slowdown, right? You're not tired, you're not cold, your weight loss hasn't stalled out, then all signs indicate you could keep going. But I also think planning 12 weeks is probably enough. 12 weeks on, take some time off, go back to it. So I like 12. If you just wanted me to pull a number out of the air, 12 weeks. You could also go by like sort of your biorhythms, like what's happening in your body, how are you feeling? Do you have like mental fatigue about the diet? Are you tired of not being able to eat everything that you want? Like, what's going on mentally as well as physically? That also can play into it. But also depends how extreme your cut's been, right? Like maybe you just did a very subtle cut. You could just keep going on that for quite a while. But if you did a pretty like extreme cut, well, that's made shorter. Maybe even 6 weeks is enough of that. So it's a little bit relative. What Forrest said, the more I learn about nutrition, the more I realize how poorly we were taught about food growing up. Yeah, that is absolutely totally true. And one of the reasons I do what I do is like I didn't know much about nutrition. And then I came into keto. I learned some about nutrition. And then keto stopped working for me based on what I'd learned about keto. And I was like, oh, I don't need more nutrition about why keto is the best way to eat. Because you know what? This kind of happens, right? You get into keto. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. You get into keto and you're like, I am in. I am a convert. I am in. Like, this is the way to go. And then you just get like a lot of reinforcing knowledge, which is, good because people are excited. It's like, it's the best. I've never felt so good. I've never had so much success. But then if you stall, you're like, the knowledge I had wasn't getting me where I want. Like it got me from where I was to where I was then. But then I was like, I want to go another step and I don't have the knowledge. So then I had to start studying more outside of the keto sphere, just about general nutrition information, and learned a lot more. And then that way I could go back and learn how to fix the things that were plaguing me. So we absolutely don't. To answer, that was just a very long way to say, I agree with you. We have no idea what we don't know until we know it. And we need a lot better education out there in the world. Cameron said, and this will be, I think, my last question of the night. So is there anything you would like to focus on in 2023? So in 2023, I think the things that I'm going to be focusing on for the business, for this situation, I've got some personal goals. I would like to add some more muscle mass. I made a goal for 2022 that was to be more consistent in the gym and add some muscle mass. And I kind of half-assed it a little bit. I definitely am much more consistent than I was in 2021. But it's very easy to go from nothing to something. But I would like to be personally up on that for myself. I would also like to work on the part of my brain that keeps telling me that I should focus on losing weight all the time instead of just being a healthy person and gaining some muscle mass. And in my business, the thing I want to work on is really making it very easy for people to get unstuck. Making that program super accessible. That's why I'm dropping a price point on it, but also offering sort of more help if somebody needs more hand holding. And I don't mean that in a negative way, like literally, like I want to hold your hand if you need it. And then just making sure people know about the labs book and that is taken care of. So I'm not going in a new direction. I just want to do what I do and do it a little bit better, clearer, cleaner, and more helpful to people. I would like to do more YouTube. So I have this podcast, Keto Life Support, and up till now, I've just been doing it audio, but I would like to add a video component to that, because I think people sometimes want to watch my lips move, not just hear the sound of my voice. So thank you, Cameron. I appreciate that. One step at a time. I feel like if you aren't growing, you're shrinking. So I want to keep growing, but I don't have to be doing it wrong to do it better next time. Right. All right, guys. I hope you have a fabulous New Year's. Oh, wait, what does it say? What for said, just talking about protein, thinking about the palm-sized piece of meat. Oh, yeah. Palm-sized piece of meat. Now, I have a giant palm. Look, even if I stretch it, I have a giant hand. So anyway, I can get away with that. But thank you guys for joining me. I think I will see you in the new year, and I will be announcing how to get into Keto Unstuck at that point. So hang on if you want to join, and I will talk to you guys then. Happy New Year, everybody.